Okay, so let's try, stay in this position, but just a bit of breathing through the small hole. So feeling the air coming in and then feeling it going out. We just want to feel the thickness of the air. You can feel the nostrils cooling as you bring the air in. And then the nostrils heat up a bit as the warmer air goes out. Mark the breathing with the movement of the hands, feeling the air that the hands are moving through. When you see enlightened masters moving, it always looks like they're moving in slow motion. Their attention sort of stitches each moment to the next, so they never get distracted. So we're always trying to find devices that will help us emulate that. straightening the arms behind, pulling the chest open, moving the head a little. And then the hands round to the front, linking the fingers, turning the hands out and just bowing the spine now as much as you can. Now the chin is digging into the chest, into the sternum. Round to the back. And then one more to the front. Now let's just have the stick behind. And just getting lower down on the spine. Putting the stick on these vertebrae that tend to collapse a bit with the gravity of daily life. And bringing the stick up to the shoulders. And trying not to let the spine collapse. Okay, let's just start by tilting a little. Again, like everything's in slow motion, there's sort of deliberateness. We want to feel the inertia. If you feel the inertia, then you'll also feel the spirit that has to fight against that to get any movement to happen. I want the spirit to be as pure as possible. Feeling the muscles either side. The muscles one side contract, which tips me over and makes the muscles the other side stretch. And then I allow those stretched muscles to spring back. And then just turning. Good. Now just a few pulling and pushing. Just working the sticks, so sort of twisting as well. and pushing. And pulling again. And then one more pushing. Feel the body. Think of it as a collection of joints rather than bones. And all of those joints are light and buoyant, springy. Feel the joints in the skull where the cranial plates interlock, and the joints in the sacrum and the sternum. Okay, so let's just try pulling in the rope. So trying to get the shoulder blade really mobile. So feeling the activity of the shoulder blade. My shoulder blade reaches down my arm, and then it's the shoulder blade that springs back to start the pull. And feel the mind that goes with it. So the mind has to get a little bit fierce to allow the shoulder blade to release. Same thing, but up and down. Again, trying to feel the shoulder blade. The more the joint opens, the more it springs back. And then the more it compresses, the more it wants to push apart. Okay, good. And now let's just try a bit of very, very simple. Hands moving towards each other, hands moving away. You can coordinate it with the breathing or just feel like a natural rhythm. But what we want to do is feel the return. Here it's like I'm stretching a spring, and at some point it has to pull back. And here I'm compressing something which brings the hands away from each other. The Qigong that Ronit does, this is their basic exercise. And they do it for hours, literally. Sitting down normally. They visualize, as they open the hands, that are reaching out into the universe, just expanding as much as you can. And then here, bringing it all back into you. The breathing is the model for all of our movement, really. I breathe in, and then at some point I can't breathe in anymore, so I have to breathe out. And then I can't breathe out anymore, so it springs back into the next in-breath. And now the same thing, but the sphincters, pulling in the sphincters and the navel. So tightening as into as small a space as possible, the dantian, then just releasing and pushing them out. So this is much more muscular, like those internal muscles in the lower diaphragm. And now let's try just a figure of 8 exercise, sitting down. So now the movement becomes really quite complex. Okay. Now let's try some of the butterfly. Opening the legs. legs straight out in front. Yin yoga, at least 3 minutes in each stretch. Then kneeling. And then down into the fetus. Back up and separating the feet a little so that you can sit on the floor between them. And then again, just down into the fetus for a minute or so. And back up. Now lying back. Let's just straighten both legs out first. And then just pull one knee up and stretch it. So you're straightening one leg, but stretching up the other one. And then the other way. And one more the other side. And the other side. And then pulling both knees up and apart. The sacrum comes off the ground. And then just exercising the legs such that the sacrum is rocked. Into the sumo squat. And then up. Nobody digging down into the spring, and then the spring will send you up. Okay, let's try the reaching. I'm just feeling the shoulder blade. Remember Ching? He said he had his big breakthrough after he had the dream that he was pushing hands, but he didn't have any arms. So I suspect he was all shoulder blade. Good. And then just to riding horse and feel the shoulder blade. In a sense, it's the most important part of the arm. It's not really the arm, I mean, it's the back, but it becomes the arm. And now we want the same thing, this feeling of this looseness in the shoulder blade, but from the hips away from the sacrum. So remember, this is how I move. I sink into one leg and then I imagine or feel or make the hip release from the sacrum, reach down the leg and pull the foot, which moves me into it. So what we want to do is catch the mind. So remember how, to get the shoulder blade to really release, you have to really mean it and put a bit of effort into it. And something in your mind has to get more fierce and more determined to make it happen. And that's especially true with moving from the hips. So something in me has to really, part of me is bloody minded and not wanting to come out of this leg. But then the other part of me is really fiercely making an effort to move. And it's that, ooh, that release. It's that same feeling as the release of the shoulder blade from the spine. It's the same feeling as the release of the hip from the sacrum. You need to be really stable in the weighted leg to allow looseness across, across the sacrum. It's actually really difficult. Yeah, so the arms have this feeling that they've come away from the spine, so the shoulder blade out and also up, like up and over. So they have this saying of the back feeling as though it's plucked up. But we want the same thing here, like your hip has risen in order to then go down. So the arms and the legs, they're very much the same, because the arm drops down from the shoulder into the hand, the same as the leg drops down from the hip into the foot. Now let's just try the breathing, but feeling the air again. So you can't move quickly because there's too much resistance from the air. Okay. Now let's try a bit of this one. Feel the looseness in the joints. Opposite things with each side of the body, which produces a turn. Feel the feet working the ground. And now turning. The first warm-up exercise, but again from this action of the feet. So one foot pulls, grips and pulls, and the other one extends and straightens and effectively pushes. Try and get the sense that the hands are very much beneath the hips. Also, my hands are just trying to reach down to my knees, if not my feet. Okay, and then back. And let's try just going down. So this sense of opening the legs to swallow the ground up. So my body's moving down, but it's because I feel as though I'm drawing the ground up into the space between my legs. So I'm feeding. I want every movement that I do to come from the spirit. So something in me really opens up here fiercely. And that starts the suction, which draws me down. Like I'm opening a big space, and that creates like a vacuum, which then sucks into it. This is yielding, creating a space that the other person gets sucked into. You're not just getting out of the way. Now let's just squat. Feeling the stretch across the hips and the sacrum. My elbows are pushing my knees apart, and I'm pushing the big toe down. Then bringing some weight forwards. And now moving the legs. So one leg out, and then in, and then the other leg out. And then back up. Okay, let's try the backwards and forwards one, but from bow and arrow, from riding horse. Just turning to the corner and moving backwards and forwards, using the leg like a spring. So I sink into it and it bounces me back. Try and stay in the outside edge. And then the leg will just be that much more springy. So when we sink, we're always sinking into a spring. So return is always there. Just need to let go and it will spring me back. And then just back into riding horse a sec. Again, feeling the wings of the legs. And then turning to the other corner. And again, springing, sinking into the spring, and the spring bounds me back. Sinking down here, and it returns me. So you already feel the return as you're sinking into the spring. And then you just catch that and go with it. So it's as though there's no break. The two phases back and forth, they sort of overlap. You can really slow down, and it seems that you're stopping, but the return is already there. Now with one foot forwards, but the same thing, but instead of bouncing into the leg, bouncing out of the leg, I pull myself into it by bending it. So I pull myself into this leg. Effectively, I'm pulling the ground up, and then I just let that out the other side. So yield and attack, very clear. One side is yielding, bending, becoming round. The other side is straightening and attacking. Try and get activity in the toes. The straightening leg, the toes extend and splay. And then as the leg bends, the toes start that really by clenching. People are very reluctant to get activity in their feet. But if I can bully them into it, they just look so much more awake. Of course, most people don't want that. They want to slumber. And then some with the other foot forwards. Clench and extend. Clench and extend. So everything I do starts off with a yield. Okay, and then just back to riding horse again. Feeling this hugging the ground. So my hip comes up before it reaches down for the foot. Same as my arm comes back before it reaches forwards and around the other person. Now let's just try the 2 circles. It's the same, you know. It's basically pulling in the rope, just rounding it up. So something's reaching forwards and then something contracts to draw in. And now let's try the figure of 8 again, but we're standing up. It's like there's no linear flow, there's constant acceleration, deceleration, so you're always changing direction. I still feel the drag. The world is wanting this just to slowly grind to a halt. We're just trying to look at, you know, what's actually doing this movement. What part of me is responsible? I don't want it to be my designing, calculating mind. It's my willingness to fight, really. It's the fighting spirit that's pushing me along this path, which can't be described. Figure of 8 doesn't really do it justice. And then the hand that goes down, just get it to sort of loop behind you. So it feels like you're in the middle of this maelstrom rather than it all happening in front of you. And let's just do a few standing. Relaxing, letting it settle down the leg. The foot resting on the knee helps keep me in the outside edge. And so even though I have the weight in this right leg, I can still feel as though this hip can reach away from the sacrum and down. Very much, like the shoulder blade. It's easy with the shoulder blade because they're so mobile and they're not having to support your weight. What sort of fierceness do I have to induce to get this to come away from the sacrum, or feel as though it is? So the leg I'm standing on is obviously straightening just to keep me up, but it's also really trying to feed, to round out and scoop at the ground. And it's that dynamic play between those two that produces the energy. And remember, the name of the game, really, what we're working for is those moments of heightened awareness where we just become really awake and full of vitality. And so it's just arousal, really, just try and cast your mind back all those decades ago when you used to get sexually aroused. You just become a different person. The agenda is completely different than it is in the normal day-to-day. Different emotions, different feelings, different energy. So that's the sort of, we want a little sprinkling of that energy in everything that we do. You know, it's Freud's great insight, isn't it, that all energy is sexual energy. But civilization tends to dampen that. There's a pump going on. I'm fucking the ground, or the ground's fucking me. And one more. Scooping at the ground. It's like, you know, performing a piece of music. You know, imagine like a difficult piece of music, like one of those Beethoven sonatas. So the hours, the hundreds of hours required to actually get any technical proficiency. But that's just the skeleton. Then when it comes to performance, hopefully, you know, the nerves and the excitement of the audience makes something else come out, and it becomes interpreted, becomes full of feeling and emotion. It's the same with this. You know, part of me is just standing there serenely with this straightening leg, but another part of me is clothing it in energy and spirit. Let's finish. So back to riding horse one last time. Just feel the hips coming away from the sacrum. And then bringing it up. And it's like you're just coiling. There's these coils going up the spine from each leg.